Welcome to the Arcaro Insights podcast, where we help B2B executives deliver better results with the latest ideas in change and innovation for your organization. The episodes feature fascinating discussions with interesting people who have a great story to tell, as well as our original content communicated with AI voices. If you can, please read the show notes to get the most from each episode. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy it.
The space model stands for these 6 factors that if we've got them, we can focus, we can perform, we can be more creative, we can collaborate better. But if we haven't got them, our brains go into a negative place where we can't work at our best. So it's a really useful planning tool. It's also a really useful conversation to have with the team about which is the one that really matters to them most, because all 6 matter to all of us, but we do have different preferences. And it can be useful to know which one matters to people most when we're trying to work with them. So the 6 factors are...
This is Mark Blackwell. Welcome to the Arcaro Insights podcast. This is the show where we help business executives with tools and techniques to thrive in the adaptive world. So I guess like you and I, we've been hearing a lot about AI recently. Indeed, if you've been listening to the Arcaro podcast, you'll be hearing a lot about AI. And one of the topics that emerges from this, which I find quite interesting, is it forces us to think about what it means to be human. If we're going to dance with AI and collaborate with AI, we need to know what our strengths are as well as our weaknesses so that we can be most productive in an AI-enabled world. And in those conversations, I'm hearing 3 C's come up a lot. I'm hearing the C for creativity, C for curiosity, and a C for collaboration. So Hilary and I, we decided that we'd talk about the 3rd C today, collaboration. But I've got a feeling that we're going to be mentioning maybe creativity and curiosity possibly in the discussion as well. But I think it's really important and very timely that we think about how our brains work and who we are as we're engaging in AI. And so that's why I'm really happy and very proud that we've got Hilary Scarlett on the show today. So Hilary has now got to the 3rd edition of a very popular book, and which she's going to tell us all about, the Neuroscience for Organizational Change. And we're going to use that concept to understand things. And I think neuroscience for me, I find a very powerful tool when you're working with technical people who often think this human stuff is just fluff and we should get on to the science and the engineering, that really hard stuff in the workplace. But neuroscience gives us a route in to how humans are with some seriously hard science. So thank you for that. Hilary, how did you get here? Tell me more.
How did I get here in terms of notes? Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you for inviting to be on the podcast. I'm really delighted to be here. How did I get here? Good question. My background has been in organizational change for many years, and I've always had an interest in the people side of change. How do you help them through change in organizations? And having done studies in organizational psychology quite a few years ago, I came across an article written by a psychiatrist saying we can now understand enough about the human brain to apply that knowledge to the world of work. And that caught my interest, thinking perhaps if we can bring a bit more science, a bit more evidence to what goes on, that would be really helpful. So originally I studied virtually with neuroscientists in the States. Over the last 12 or so years, have also been working with neuroscientists here in Europe. And I kind of see my role as taking their work out of the lab and bringing it into the workplace in a practical way, bringing some of the science and evidence to leaders in organizations, but perhaps more importantly, what does that mean to me as a leader going through change in an organization?
Brilliant. Thank you. So we're talking about collaboration, and particularly in the context that we may not all be in the same physical building all the time. And we're working for even a medium-sized company. You can be in multiple sites nowadays, very, very. And let's start on our journey of collaboration with that email pings in your box to say, you've been selected for Project Magma or whatever it is, and you will be meeting on a team. Tell me, what you know about our brain, what are the things that are likely to happen to most people?
When that email is, well, in some ways it depends, because very much when we receive that email, much of what influences what we take in is our past experience. So if I've been invited to work on teams before like that and I enjoyed it and it was a pleasant experience and maybe I learned a lot, then the voice in my head is going to subconsciously saying, well, this could be interesting, this could be good. If, on the other hand, I've been on something like that before and I find it quite difficult, then the voice in my head will be saying, do you really want to do this? Watch out. Also, current circumstances have a big impact on what we take in. So if I'm already stressed out and feeling uncertain about what's going on and that email arrives, that's just going to add to my stress. So things like past experience have a big impact about how we feel about
Yeah.
that email. Current circumstances and personality have a big impact. So that'll be a first thing. And then the second bit will be about, well, who else is on the team?
Right, yes. And whether they're in your tribe or you're not in your tribe, do you know them? Will you be able to live up to their expectations? Do you know the leader? So, and yes, please.
Absolutely. And I think we'll be checking that, who else is on that email list? As you say, do I know them? Are they my tribe? Because I guess our first instance is look for people who we know, who we have a connection with, and that will make a difference too, whether we feel there's some kind of connection, some kind of belonging.
Yeah. And so I'm fascinated by one of the ideas that you mention a lot in your book is that our brains are fundamentally not designed for today's workplace. We think about a model of 2 million years ago running on the savannah, and we see something yellow flashing at speed, but we haven't diagnosed what it is. What is our response going to be? Excitement or fear?
Yeah, exactly. And the whole threat kicks in much faster because it's all about, as you say, our brains still think they're out of the savannah. The key goal when we're out of the savannah and now in the 21st century is survival. That's your brain's overarching goal. And to achieve survival, the key thing is to avoid threats because we can do without a glass of water and food for quite a while and still survive. But if that threat kicks in, that's the immediate threat to our survival. So absolutely, threat kicks in much faster than reward response.
And that's something very important for leaders to know when they see people's reactions to behaviours, that a threat response is normal. It's not an abnormal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important in terms of survival, but it does impair our ability to think quite often too, because when we're in that threat state, prefrontal cortex, which is part of the brain that's so important in terms of the work that we all do, often referred to as the executive center of the brain, because the part of the brain where we do our kind of considered thinking, working memory, emotional control is in the prefrontal cortex. When we're in that fight or flight response, the prefrontal cortex gets deprioritized by the brain. So we can't think as well. We don't have that same level of emotional control either.
So I think when a leader gets the team together for the first time, and we can talk about how that team forms shortly, but maybe be aware of some of these things going on in the organization too, not to read people and make judgments too quickly in how they're responding to that initial situation.
Yeah,
Perhaps.
absolutely, because it's giving people a time to get that. Yes, initially people might be kind of checking out: do I fit in? Do I belong? Do I like these people? Do I feel competent in their eyes? All those kind of things will be going on in our heads. So one of the key things I think for leaders to do is to make those connections between the team. If you've been asked to be on that project team, is in some way to get to help people feel connected and get to know each other slightly better, be it face to face or be it online.
Absolutely. Because you've got a great model to sort of double click on this to help all of us understand what we need to thrive in these situations. And it's called the spaces model. I know it ends up with this social connection, but talk us through
Yeah.
the spaces model.
No, absolutely. So the space model stands for these 6 factors that if we've got them, we can focus, we can perform, we can be more creative, we can collaborate better. But if we haven't got them, our brains go into a negative place where we can't work at our best. So it's a really useful planning tool. As it's kind of almost like a checklist, have people got them? It's also a really useful conversation to have with the team about which is the one that really matters to them most, because all 6 matter to all of us, but we do have different preferences, and it can be useful to know which one matters to people most when we're trying to work with them. So the 6 factors are, the first one is self-esteem. So this is part about feeling respected, feeling people trust me, This one's also important to the people who want to feel they're improving their skills. So the learners, improvers in our teams, the self-improvers, that's important to them. So with self-esteem, it's how can we show people quickly that we trust them, we respect them? How can we give people learning opportunities? How can we make them feel competent and capable? P is for purpose, and there's lots of research behind the importance of purpose to us, that sense that what I'm doing makes a difference to the world, and particularly because we are such social creatures that we're making a difference to other people. So reminding people of the difference they're making, the contribution they're making. A is for autonomy, so it's having some control. And
Yes.
it can be quite tiny things, but as human beings, we need to feel we're not complete victims of what's going on. I've got a little bit of control over what's happening here in this project team or this change. C is for certainty. Our brains are prediction machines. They want to know what's coming up. They are constantly, subconsciously trying to predict, trying to work out what's going to happen so they can better protect
Yeah.
us. It's all part of survival. So again, giving people certainty where we can. And these could be clarity about the project or just little things like sending an agenda before meetings. Because otherwise, I think so many of us have received invitations to meetings, don't quite know what the meeting's
Yeah.
about. The threat
Yeah.
response kicks
Yeah.
in, and we get anxious about, oh, what's that meeting about? Am I properly prepared? Will it be bad news? Have I done something wrong? So just sending someone an agenda settles the brain.
Yeah.
That's what the meeting's about. I can focus back on my work. So creating certainty where we can. The E is for equity, a sense of fair play, a sense of transparency. And this one becomes all the more important to us when the organization is going through change, in that we have a sense, if there's going to be change around here, I want to know I've got as good a chance as the next person at getting the job I want or training I want or whatever it might be. And S, as you say, the last one is social connection. Do I fit in? Do I belong? Do people like me? Do I like them? The research says there's nothing soft about social connection. We are deeply, deeply social creatures. And when we feel we belong, we're in a much better place to perform. And I think with all the COVID lockdown, some of the really interesting research that came out from that was what a negative impact social isolation has on us. So say there's nothing soft about social
Yeah.
connection. And I also think it's a really important one because I think there are times when we might say, well, I can't give people more certainty right now. We don't have that. But I think we can always do something about social connection, the quality of our relationship, just being a good listener, just connecting with people, having some empathy.
Brilliant. Now, I'd like to explore any one of those. I could talk for hours about them. But one of the takeaways for me is, you're quite right, is we're not equal creatures on this list. So having that as a checklist for some leaders is very important, because particularly the sort of people who may become a leader may be those that thrive on ambiguity. And so certainty isn't in their system, and downplay that, for example.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one thing I'll say to leaders too is I think, say, our brains do crave kind of certainty and want to know what's coming up. And often leaders do have a bit more control over what's coming up. Often they do have a bit more certainty. They do have a bit more information than people further down the hierarchy. So I think leaders need to remember that people further down the hierarchy, their brains might be in a more stressed place than theirs because they haven't got that same level of sense of control or influence over what might be coming up in the organization.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen this so many times that leaders have been working on a problem for weeks or months and then deliver it to the organization, assuming that they will take it in as equally quickly as they have done, forgetting that their brain has been working consciously and subconsciously for a long time to work it all through with a lot more information than they're a part of. Yeah. I
No,
mean, talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, likewise, I've seen that. I've worked with organisations where, as you say, these might come up with great plans, but then kind of go into what I call broadcast mode and just kind of say, cut emoji, go, here's what's good for customers, here's what's good for you, here's what's good for stakeholders. Now, please get on with it. And wonder why a lot of employees dig their heels in and don't want to do it, because employees have not had that same chance to come to that moment of insight about, oh, I get it. I can see why option A is better than B or C. And we need to give employees that chance to get it if we really want them to be committed to the changes.
I just, maybe just, you may not know about that. Recently, I heard about the story about children in playgrounds. Have you heard about this?
What's that?
So this is great. When you're kicking off a project and you're thinking about the certainty mode, This is based on scientific research. If you build a playground and put children in it, they will play on the swings and roundabouts. But they won't go far from the swings and roundabouts. If you build a fence around the playground, the children will stay playing on the swings and roundabouts, will explore all the way to the edge, to the boundaries. And so if you want a team to be productive, to explore, to be creative, setting clear boundaries helps with this certainty thing, because our brains crave certainty. And as soon as we know the limit to which we can go to safely, we will explore to that limit because we want that safety and certainty. And that limit is often further than people think it is, which is why children stay on the swings and the roundabouts without a fence around the playground.
That's a great example. No, absolutely. It's, setting boundaries for people so we know what's okay and what's not okay. That's a great example.
So, but anyway, let's go back to starting the project. And right now, people are worried about budgets and everything. And we're getting this team together. Option A is cut costs and just have a Teams meeting. Option B is pay for some flights and hotels and get the team together for the first meeting. Give me some neuroscience examples of which one I should choose and why I may or may not want to spend some money.
Right. Yeah, it's an integral. I appreciate a lot of organisations I work with, budgets are limited. But if possible, if the budget is there, getting people together early on a project is a really useful thing to do. That actually meeting people face to face just does on the whole change the way we feel about them. We all have what are called in-groups and out-groups. So in-groups are the people who are my tribe, I feel close to, I'm more forgiving towards them, I have more empathy towards them. Out-groups are the people my brain sees them as from another tribe, so a bit of a threat to me. One of the things that helps to break that down, to bring people more into our in-groups, is gathering people together. The more we're kind of with people, the more on the whole we tend to put them into our in-group. So if the budget is there, getting people together face-to-face early on is a really positive thing to do if we can. And then the work online will flow that bit more easily.
But I think you've got some science to say that it's more than just getting people together in a room, in a formal office scenario. There are other areas where the collaboration can be helped in more of a social setting. Tell me about.
Yeah, well, some of the newest research coming out is what's looking at what's called hyperscanning, to look at multiple brains at the same time, like put little caps on us now and see what's going on when we're together or when children in a classroom trying to learn or whatever it might be. And what they're able to identify is something called interbrain synchronisation, when our same parts of our brains begin to be activated in the same way at the same time. And when interbrain synchronisation happens, why should we care? Because when that happens, it seems to be we perform better on the whole. It's almost like we're looking at the world from a similar perspective. So we seem to reach agreement more quickly. They have more empathy for each other. Say examples of teams working better. There seems to be more psychological safety there between people. And research does suggest that works better when we're physically together in a room rather than on screen. So hurrah for technology and all the fact we're having this conversation today because of technology. But there's a price to pay, and I think we just need to be aware of that. So I'm very pragmatic about this stuff, but I think we just need to think about when are virtual meetings good enough, and when actually do we need to be together.
In my takeaway, there needs to be a bonding period so that the later virtual meetings can be more productive, because you've had that mirror neuron, that intrabrain synchronicity firing away right at the kickoff meeting.
No, absolutely. And once we've got that, and because in-groups, out-groups, good news, bad news, they are very flexible. So the good news, in-groups are very flexible. We can put people into our in-groups quite quickly, but we can also lose that as well. So it's important from the start of a project as fast as we can to have that sense of team. And again, there's lots of interesting research about what creates that sense of team, that sense of tribe. Just having a name for the team, actually, research shows just being I belong to the same team as you, suddenly I care that bit more about you than I do about somebody from another team. And one of the strongest and most constructive things I think we can do is reminding people our shared sense of purpose. So at the beginning of that meeting, and maybe every meeting we have, what are we trying to achieve together? I think is one of the strongest ways to create a sense of team and tribe, and a really constructive one too, just reminding people you might be from a different part of the organization, you might even be from a different company, but what are we trying to achieve together?
Absolutely. One of the most powerful questions starting a meeting with is why. I'm constantly amazed how long it takes intelligent people, when we're all intelligent people, to really get it, because we've all got different bits of information that has caused us to be there in the first place. So the uniting on purpose is key.
Absolutely, yeah.
I have to say, as someone who lives in France in a culture that values the 1 or 2 hour lunch break and the concept of eating, is there some science that can defend this?
Hey, it is time for a quick break. We hope you are enjoying the podcast. If you have any comments or questions, the show notes for this episode have our contact details. We would love to hear from you. Perhaps you might have an idea for a future podcast. And now let's continue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well done, the French. No, absolutely. No, absolutely. There is research that shows us eating together actually, again, helps to create a sense of team and bonding. And even more than that, interesting, there's research that shows that those kind of meals where we share dishes, so like Chinese meals where you're passing plates around, or some Indian meals where you're passing plates around, just that very fact of having a meal where you're sharing plates, passing plates to each other, actually does create our sense of collaboration and our empathy for each other. And people in negotiations afterwards are much more likely to work well together. So eating together, sharing plates is a really positive thing to do.
Fascinating. Again, note that everyone, when you're arguing with the finance manager, there is definitely money for the budget on the first team get together for the dinners. So we can defend that, and we'll get that in the show notes where the science comes from that. I think that's quite important for many. But this is all very serious stuff that we often forget, and it's taken over the ages that there was a reason why these things existed. For me, just one area to explore, having those out of work bonding experiences is important as the in work bonding experiences. If we're going to collaborate, we've got to remember the basic reason is that in an adaptive world, the problem isn't to be solved, is typically not known by experts. We all have a part of the solution. None of us likely have the whole solution together. So we have to be curious about each other and be comfortable about that if the team is to be productive. And again, that makes us human, as we were saying from the 3 C's before, the creativity, the collaboration, and the curiosity.
Yeah.
But we live in a world where we're so keen to perform that we often forget that, and we think about shouting first and communicating our thoughts and asking questions of the other. So that's the reflection. Have you had any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, just that, go about that team, so just that curious, just finding before even the team gets going so much, just finding what we have in common, because we tend to walk into a room and see people as being quite different, put them into our out group. But one of the little exercises one of my clients does is when people are first coming together is just to find some kind of shared experiences. So who here is a football fan, who here is a twin, and as interesting as what can be any question, but it's just things like, oh, you're also a twin. Oh, you also support that particular football team. And it's these little things that help create that sense of in groups within the group that's so important in terms of connecting people and seeing people rather than seeing people as other, seeing them as part of my group, part of my tribe.
Gotcha. No, that's it. So we hear a lot about the term psychological safety.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what you think that is? And because I often hear people misunderstanding the term. What is it and how can we develop it based on neuroscience?
Yeah, for me, when we have psychological safety in a team, is a team where people feel they can speak out, they can ask a question, and as long as they're doing so constructively, that's to be encouraged. So it's a team where people feel safe to talk about mistakes they've made or question something, as long as it's done in a constructive manner. So it's not a team that's all terribly nice to each other, because people are able to ask the tricky question, say, as long as they're doing so constructively. And it's There's great work by Amy Edmondson, academic, showing that teams that have that psychological safety actually perform better because they're actually more willing to talk about mistakes and learn from those mistakes, rather than teams where we feel we've kind of got to sweep it under the carpet and not talk about it. I think the good thing about psychological safety is we can create it within a team. You don't have to wait for the whole organization. A particular team can have it. It takes time. I think the behavior of the leader is so important. I've seen teams where it's been fractured very quickly because suddenly a leader's got angry with somebody about something, or kind of humiliated them in front of the rest of the team. That absolutely, it's fragile. So it absolutely shatters it. But teams that can do it, I think, do perform really well. And I think one of the great examples for me is the world of aviation, is the one I often cite in workshops I'm running. Back in the 1970s, there were far more accidents, far more fatalities. Two key things the world of aviation did is, one, they arose from black box recordings. Quite often the first officer did not quite have the language to challenge the captain. They could see something was going wrong, but didn't have the language to challenge. And captains in those days were very hierarchical, don't question me. They changed that relationship. So there was a discussion. The first officer could ask questions, make comments. The captain was much more open to that. So they're working much better as a team. And I think that's so true in many organizations too. If we can just change that relationship between team and leader, and have a leader who is open to being challenged, to say, as long as it's being done constructively and within the interest of the group overall. So that's one key thing they did. The other key thing they did was encourage people to report mistakes, because they felt if lots of mistakes are being made on a certain plane, maybe we need to change the configuration of the instruments or whatever it might be. So actively encouraging people to share their mistakes and not making them feel like fools about it. Every flight, please tell us what went wrong, and saying, thank you so much, that's really helpful. So actually welcoming those mistakes and then learning from that. And again, I think that's a great example for all organizations, for all teams. If only we can do that, get people to share their mistakes, as long as they're learning from them and they're not catastrophic, then that's a really helpful thing to do.
Totally with you on that. And again, I know from a bit of this work from the safety experience I had at DuPont, where DuPont is big on safety.
Yeah.
Encouraging people to do this is one of the functions is metrics, and you've got to see the reporting as the positive, not the absolute number as the positive, especially in the early days. So get you entirely on that. Another thing about learning is, tell me about the neuroscience of being given an idea and told to run with it versus co-creating and building it within the team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I've had some influence over an idea makes a big difference to us. And I think we've probably, if we can all remember times when we've been told to go away and do something, and that feels very different from when we're being involved in making that decision about what it is we're going to do. And I know things like coaching is coming much more to the fore as a way of leading people. Neuroscience would absolutely endorse that. Neuroscience shows that goals that we have chosen, we process in a different part of our brains from goals we've been given by our line manager. And not only that, research also shows if it's a goal that I've chosen, when it gets difficult or tough, I'm more likely to keep on going if I chose that goal. And there's plenty of research that shows if we've chosen something, we have a sense, it's mine, I chose it. So if it does get difficult, I will keep going with it. As opposed to a goal we've been given by somebody else, we might go, too hard. So the difference it makes to feel that we've kind of in that decision making, and there's something called the IKEA effect, the IKEA bias, which is this lovely thing about IKEA that people might know. You buy packs and you have to assemble it yourself. And researchers, if we've had to bash a few nails in ourselves or assemble it in some way, again, we feel more ownership of it. I had a bit of input to it. It makes a big difference. And indeed, in terms of influencing, one of the sort of techniques of influencing is allowing people to have a bit of input. Because if we've had a bit of input to something, again, we're more protective of that idea, we're more supportive of that idea. So giving people a bit of control, a bit of influence, whatever it might be, and it can be quite small, makes a big difference to us.
So the control is not just the goal, selecting a goal, because it may be that you've had the goal given to you, but it's how you achieve that goal gives you the autonomy as part of the spaces model. Is that the science supports that as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Say the autonomy, it can be quite little things that make a difference to us. It can be, it doesn't, and I think also, I think leaders do need to be very clear about, because I think sometimes there's a desire to say, oh, we are involving you, we are engaging you. I think leaders need to be really honest with themselves about where are you genuinely involving people and where perhaps the decision has been made. We can't all get involved in deciding which IT system we're going to go for. But within that, giving some people a little bit of a bit of control. And I should talk about IT. I was working with a bank a while ago and with the technical team, and they were really frustrated. Said, "How come, when it's the latest iPhone comes out, everybody wants to buy the latest bit of kit or whatever, and yet when we try bringing new IT systems to the bank, everybody moans and complains." Well, I think one of the big differences is choice there. I chose to go out and buy that new phone and work out how to work it, whereas IT systems feel imposed upon us. So I think it is that sense of choice and control that makes part of the difference of that experience.
I mean, totally. There's a study that the MIT came out with earlier this year, and they talked about the shadow AI economy. Not on the one hand, 95% of AI implementations are not achieving their expectations. In the same world that up to 90% of employees use their own ChatGPT in the workforce.
Yes, yeah. Yeah,
The blocker is not willingness to use it. It's just having believe that you're part of the process.
yes, yeah, yeah, and doing it together with others. Yeah, so important. Yeah.
So I think I'm just going through your spaces list. We've done certainty, we've done autonomy, we've done the social connection. Tell me about what a manager should think about in terms of self-esteem, for example.
Yeah, well, so that's the one I think is about that making people feel that they are competent and capable and trusted. So I think with that one, it is about. I think so often we focus on all the things that we haven't got done, things we haven't got right, things yet to do, but actually pausing and helping people to acknowledge what they have achieved, what they have learned is really important. And we tend to focus on things we haven't got done because, again, the threat state is strong in the brain. So it's all about all those things I haven't got done. So we need to deliberately, as leaders, counterbalance that in the organization and deliberately activate the reward state in people's brains. And one of those will be about recognizing the achievements people have made, how well they're doing things, showing that we trust them, those kind of things will help to activate that reward center in the brain.
So I think the only one we haven't mentioned so far is equity.
Yeah, and that's the one about that can be a tricky one because that's the one about fair play, about transparency. As I mentioned earlier, that it does go. Our need for it does go up if there's going to be change in the organisation. So this is about being as transparent as we can. So this comes back to communication, being clear about what the criteria are, what success looks like, those kind of things, but also making sure people do feel they've got as good a chance at the next person at getting the training they want or whatever it might be. So it can be a tricky one because one person's sense of what's fair is not another person's sense of what's fair, but constantly thinking about that and being transparent and communicating well comes under that one.
And making sure everyone feels their voice is being heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
You've
Yeah.
been in that situation where you feel that the leader has got their pet friend or something, and he always gets the voice in the room, and no matter what you're saying, it's not being heard. So that's the role of a leader is part of
Absolutely,
equity.
and there's a lot of talk about neurodiversity these days, and especially let's say 20% of the population probably is neurodivergent. So chances are many of us do have neurodivergent people in our teams, and in conversations with neurodivergent people, they particularly will say often they need a bit of time to reflect.
Mhm.
People with autism often say if you have a meeting one day, it's really helpful for them the next day if they can have a catch up with their manager and talk about their reflections or their questions. So giving people that bit of time, for especially people like that who might not want to speak out in front of the larger group immediately, they might need that time to reflect. And to be honest, for all of us, having that chance to reflect, to go away and to come back again the next day and ask those questions, because it's a quiet mind that tends to have those moments of insight or questions or whatever. We have that phrase about sleeping on it. It's not by chance. Neuroscience would absolutely endorse that. So giving people a chance to go away, sleep on what we just discussed, and come back the next day and talk about it. As you say, everyone having that chance to have their say, but giving some people that chance to reflect is really important.
Fabulous, Hilary. That's been a tour de force of the spaces model. I know from your book that we've only touched a small part of it. So Hilary's book is Neuroscience for Organizational Change, now in its third edition, very accessible, but all at the same time solid on real science. I really enjoyed reading it, and I just dip back to it every now and then for sure. Hilary, thank you. Any key takeaways from this meeting that you'd like leaders to do? What 3 things could they action that they haven't been doing already, perhaps?
Three things to catch. Well, part of the beauty of neuroscience, I think it is small things make a big difference to us. And okay, I was working with an organisation recently, going through lots of change where they had no answers at all, so complete uncertainty about what was going on. And one of the things we said to them is just be a good listener. If you can do nothing else, just be a good listener, even if you haven't got the answers, because listening is rewarding to the brain. So if as a leader you're feeling I'm a bit stuck right now, just being a good listener is a really good thing to do. I think also if you've got people who are struggling right now in terms of change, feeling a bit out of their depth or whatever, get them to tell you about a time when they felt they were performing well. Because from a brain point of view, talking about a time when I was performing well, it's like my brain is back there again and can perform well again. So I think that's another really useful one. And perhaps on a lighter note, just having a good laugh with the team. Laughter is a great de-stressor to the brain. So having a bit of fun when you get together, eating that meal and having a laugh together could be a really good way to get the team's brains into a good place.
Fabulous, Hilary. Thank you for that. Really enjoyed it, and I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as I did. Great conversation. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Pleasure. I enjoyed it too. Thanks for inviting me.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Arcaro Insights podcast. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed producing it for you. If you have not done so already, please do subscribe with your favorite podcast provider. Even better, it would be hugely appreciated if you could share the podcast with friends and colleagues. Thank you.